We're going to get started here. Thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to OLLI and OLLI Shorts. We are the OLLI from, there we go, Stacy. We are the OLLI from the University of South Dakota. And the University of South Dakota is located in Vermillion, South Dakota. Our office, however, is in Sioux Falls. So we have 3 different places where people can take OLLI classes in South Dakota in person besides on Zoom. You can take classes in Brookings, Vermillion, and Sioux Falls. During the month of February, we have our wonderful OLLI Shorts 20-minute classes that just give you a taste of what OLLI's like. And we hope that you will join us, and as you have, thank you. And we hope you'll share this with your friends as well, because we want everybody to be able to enjoy what OLLI has to offer. If you're interested in joining our organization, you can go to www.usd.edu/OLLI. Our class today, we will have Q&A at the end. Let you know we have classes every day this month except the 21st, which is the President's Day holiday. We'll be closed that day. Our program today is sponsored by the South Dakota Humanities Council and the National Endowment for the Arts, who made this possible. I am really excited to introduce Carol Rudy to you today. Carol is the coordinator of outreach education at the Museum of Russian Art, as well as its lead docent. Carol has produced countless presentations on Russian art, has created trips to Russia, and is a presenter in several OLLI programs across the country. Carol, welcome.
And it's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be in South Dakota.
Thank you.
And I am really eager to share with you just a little bit of background on those Russian nesting dolls. We just had Mary show us her little pin, and I know that many of you may have, in fact, done some collecting of nesting dolls. So it's always nice to have a little background on where they come from and why they're so identified with Russia, at least at this moment. So my short 20-minute presentation hopefully will pique some questions and some interest in you. And if you have nesting dolls of your own and would like to show them through our Zoom camera during the question and answer period, that'd be great. So nesting dolls in the Russian craft tradition, they are of course a craft, and they are based on wood. And there's a really good reason why Russians produce things that are made out of wood, because it is one of the most forested countries of the world. There's more forests in Russia than in the Amazon, for example. And I'm just showing you an example of the northern woods that covers so much of Russia. It's basically birch and pine. So if any of you have been to Minnesota's North Woods, the boundary waters, frankly, Russian woods, Russian forests look just like that. The little towns, villages that nestle in this vast wooded area are truly dependent on trees, all things wood, for construction of buildings not only, but for tool making, etc. Farming tends to be very small plots, very small farms, carved out of this wooded area. And so quite honestly, it's natural to think that a toy industry would, or should I say a toy craft, would develop, whereby wood carvers who live in this particular part of Russia depend on knives and wood to create any number of toys. And here you see a collection of some standard toys that we associate also with Russia, hand-carved, handmade by people who know how to live in the woods and of the woods and with the woods, because that is the environment in which they find themselves. The environment is very much like that of Norway, Finland, and Sweden, because those 3 countries share with Russia the same belt of woodlands and waterlands that give rise to things like log cabin construction. However, the story of nesting dolls does not start in Russia. Nesting dolls are not native to Russia. They are native to China. And here you see a set of nesting boxes that are Chinese in character and useful for containing all sorts of things. This is the first kind of use that the nesting concept, the concept of being able to put the smallest into the next largest into the next largest, so that you can collapse the entire set into the biggest box. That concept is Chinese, not Russian. And the Chinese were using it for all sorts of things. Here, for example, is a set of nesting bowls lacquered in the manner of the Chinese. And so China, for centuries, had been using this nesting concept and had passed it along to Japan. And in Japan, the concept of a nesting doll, and you will see the Japanese version here, a small doll that fits into the bottom half of this particular doll, led quite naturally into a whole collection of Japanese style nesting dolls, including those used for religious purposes. Right here, you will see one that is based on the story of a Buddhist monk who spent 7 years isolated in a dark cave, and as a result lost the use of his arms and legs. And so a nesting doll of him is right here. You don't need arms and legs on a doll of a person who's lost the use of them. And so that tradition of Japanese nesting dolls for religious purposes is also part of the story. This concept, here you see a bigger version of that concept. So this concept of nesting dolls, bowls, boxes has a long history in the Far East, but not much of a history, frankly, in Russia until you get to 1880s. In the 1880s, Russia's indigenous craft tradition was on the downturn because mechanization and mass production was coming into Russia, and everybody would much prefer buying a metal spoon than carving one out of wood. So the craft tradition was dying out, and a group of wealthy merchants, this one in particular, Sava Monotov, would purchase estates in the countryside of thousands of acres, and happened as well to take an interest in recreating opportunities for the indigenous crafts to be maintained. Here's the main house of that vast estate. On this estate were also several villages filled with peasants, all of whom were no longer really practicing any of the crafts, particularly the wood crafts that I just described. But Sava Mamontov and his wife were very much into art, and collected in their home often some of the most famous of the Russian 19th century artists, including an artist named Ilya Repin, who happened to have painted this particular landscape of the estate. In that mix of artists was a woman named Yelena Polanova. She is the sister of another famous landscape Russian art painter named Polanov, who had a house on the estate as his kind of summer home. And she became very interested in this whole desire of this particular wealthy class to preserve the native traditions of handicraft. How to do that? How could one generate enough economic reason why wood carvers should continue to do their carving, could continue to learn how to do it, workshops could be maintained in wood carving, how to do this? Well, at the same time that she and the Mamontovs and other artists were interested in trying to keep those native crafts alive, there was a movement in Moscow and St. Petersburg that was called Art Deco, and also the arts and crafts movement. Both of those are sort of connected. So people became more and more interested as a general practice and as a way of furnishing their homes and of entertaining their children, of returning to those crafts that were now dying out. So Polanova and Mamontova, the wife of Sava Mamontova, collaborated on creating a workshop that would create wooden objects that could be sold in Moscow. And Polanova, the artist, designed these objects and then would turn her designs over to one of the villages on the estate where there was a workshop to train the peasants who lived there in their native crafts. And I'm showing you some of the things that she drew, designed, that were carved there and that were then sold in their shop in Moscow. And here is a fairly large furniture piece and another one. Very large pieces and highly sought after by the rich of Moscow at this time. Well, there's only so many of these pieces that you can sell and create. And so they were always on the lookout for new ideas. When who should return from the Far East, from Japan, with a set of wooden nesting dolls from Japan, but this particular artist member of that community, Malyotin is his name, Sergei Malyotin, and he brought back this set of nesting dolls, and people looked at him and said to themselves, wow, maybe we could produce these and make them a Russian product for our workshops. Malyotin turns the idea over to this particular woodworker who was operating a lathe, and that worker turns out the first Russian set of nesting dolls based on the concept that he got from Japan. Here are some of those earliest dolls that were turned out and then handed over to the artists living at this and part of this community that Mamontov had established at his estate. And the results are now, of course, much collected and on exhibit at a toy shop, a toy factory museum, so that you too can see. And you can tell what they look like. They're largely a group of women, all of them dressed in the classic Russian style. You can see the aprons, the seraphim, the headscarf, etc. And then, of course, the little tiny baby there. And then sometimes under the arm of the biggest doll would be some other sorts of thing, like a rooster maybe, or a pan. Underneath the dolls that were created, and this is a standard thing, if you have one, you can check. If you have a nesting doll set, you can check. Under the largest one is all the data and information about who made the doll and where it was made. So over time, of course, this concept takes off big time. People really think these make great toys for their children. And so they're purchasing them and really enjoying them, to the point where in 1900, Maria Mamontova, who is the wife of Sava Mamatov, and who has been collaborating with Polanova on this, takes the nesting dolls from Russia that they've created to the Paris Exposition in 1900. And everybody loves them. She gets a bronze medal for them, and people begin to order batches of these toys, and they get distributed throughout Europe. Here is Maria. They get distributed throughout Europe and the United States. And from then on, nesting dolls become connected to Russia. They're sold in Moscow in the Children's Educational Workshop, which was specially designed for learning toys for children. And at a certain point, that workshop no longer exists, and the production moves to a town named Sergev Posad, in particular to the monastery at Sergev Posad, where toy making for the purpose of giving objects, wood-created objects, to the pilgrims who come here has been an ongoing thing for at least a century already. So this monastery and its workshops take over the production, and this is some of the results of their production. So you can see slight differences, the inclusion, for example, of an entire family. Here is one such large doll, and now the male is also included. And so you're seeing a greater variety in the types of dolls and in the way that dolls are being created. But this remains a pretty classic kind of doll, always with the apron in the front and the seraphim straps around the back. And just to show you again, the back of such dolls. So they're painted as though they are clothed. Well, it doesn't take long. Here is Sergev Posad in relationship to Moscow, and here it is on the large map. It doesn't take long before other woodworking towns begin to see what a great idea this is. And so other towns are eager to jump into the nesting doll world of production. And you see some of those nesting doll production sites here. We're going to take a look at this one, and this one to give you a sense of the variety of nesting doll productions. So the first town to pick up the idea in about 1925 is this particular town with Meyerhoff as the man, the woodworking artist, who was shopping around looking for some more woodworking ideas, attended a fair in another town, saw this nesting doll concept, and said, yeah, you betcha, we can do something like that too. And so he took it home and began in his workshop to produce a very different looking doll. This particular doll becomes distinctive to that town. And what's distinctive about it, I think you can tell. What he does is he creates an ornate apron. So the apron is no longer a plain apron, but it has flowers on it. There's still an apron. There's still a scarf, but the scarf is now more decorated, as you can see. And basically underlying the paint is the color yellow. He adds brighter colors to this, production and aniline paints, which in and of themselves are brighter. His workshop, called a factory, but in Russia, factories are really workshops where everyone does a different part of the work. His family's workshop is pictured here with the largest doll that they ever created. So there's a really, really big doll for you. And Again, you can see the little swirls often at the top of the scarf, indicating the hair that's underneath, another distinctive feature of this particular doll. So that's the first place where the nesting doll tradition takes hold, but it's not the only place. So the town Maiden also decides that they want to get into the business as well. And you can see here is a classic doll from Maiden. Basically, it looks the same as the one we just saw. The colors are different. There's a different use of colors. There's a freer painting of the requisite flower on the apron. But in general, it's here we have one with a blue scarf instead of a red. So you can see the individuality coming in on this from this particular town's collection. But generally speaking, they look pretty much the same. I can tell the difference usually by the eyes. The eyes on these are wider. So a true expert can really see the difference in influence. And finally, another town among an increasing group of towns that produce these is a town named Kirov. And what the Kirov workman discovered is that you can take little bits of straw and you can dye the straw, and then you can glue it on to the nesting doll, and then you can varnish over it. And then you will have a kind of a 3D look to the decor on your doll. So these are a couple of examples from Kirov. All of these flowers and all of these bits and all of, well, this is hand painted, but all of these bits are really little tiny cut out pieces of straw that have been dyed and glued on. Here is the same thing. And so you can right here as well and right there. So you get a texture to this particular doll and the whole concept of being able to add things to the doll itself. Well, the tradition just simply, as I said, moves to many places. So here's a place that has been making wooden goblets and trays for centuries and painted them beautifully with their distinctive designs. They just added nesting dolls to that, and you can pick them out. You can understand where they come from just by looking here and noticing that it's the same design as there. And this particular pottery works, doing famous pottery, Gazal pottery, just simply turn to woodworking and creates nesting dolls in the same design. And from here, my friends, the variety is truly infinite, using wood burning techniques, creating sets of different ideas. Here are the churches of Russia. There's the Russian warriors right there. The ancient Russian women who used to wear that kind of headdress. You can get, I always call this the Christmas tree look, shape to your nesting dolls. And then you can branch out even further. And here's this wonderful chicken egg set that you can get. If you're truly a skillful painter, you can put the stories of Pushkin right here, or you can retell the Snow Maiden story just by the decor that you put on her apron. Truly, Pushkin, again, his famous stories are can be hinted at here so that you have kind of a way to teach them to your children. It's just simply amazing what you can do. And in the Soviet period, the nesting dolls continued. And of course, we have the cosmonaut in the rocket. Of course, what a perfect way to create a nesting doll. And from there, of course, you go into very sophisticated painterly museum quality dolls that are painted by individual artists whose name will appear on the bottom of the piece. Here is a piece, a set with the story of Tsar Sultan painted on the bottom. Notice that there's still the face of the woman on the top, so we still have that look of a person, but the real interest at this point comes in the retelling of the story. We have Jewish nesting doll sets, so you can retell, you can see the Jewish family. Here's the mother with the baby, of course, and the prayer shawls, and the fiddler on the roof is right there, and the man with the Torah right here. So you can turn these around from and see from all sides bits and pieces of Jewish life. And here's a nativity set as well that retells the story of the nativity, and all of these painted beautifully by masterful painters and truly museum worthy. And then you have the inventive people. Take a look at this. I included her fingers so you could get a sense of the scale of the carving of this nesting doll, with the smaller one and the truly tiny one. See how they stand up and lay out here? But in reality, they're the size of a Christmas ornament. Here's another one of her pieces. This is by a woman last name of Dunbar, who's the artist and who produces these sorts of things. What beautiful little tiny pieces. And then someone came up with the idea of a calendar set. So here's the day, see the tie pointing, here's the month, and here's the year. And so we have a calendar set. And then, of course, the Western influence comes in. Here's the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, and here's the Beatles themselves. So truly creativity, whatever theme you can do with a nesting concept, you can do easily just by turning and painting. I love this one. Here is the largest doll. The outside exterior, of course, is her skin. The next one in is her bones, and the next one in, her internal organs. So a great, great set to give to a budding doctor or nurse or someone in the medical field so they can understand and keep their anatomical knowledge up to date. And humorously, the history, the evolution of the cell phone. I'm sure some of us remember the huge car phones we used to have. Well, here are all the gradations of the cell phone, with the smallest one fitting in to each one going up. And a humorous one as well, wonderful storytelling bit. I'm not sure why the smallest one is a pear. I've never been able to figure that out, but here's Little Red Riding Hood. She goes, of course, inside the wolf, and the wolf is inside the grandmother, peeking out because that has been cut open. And so all sorts of different designs and looks in nesting dolls have evolved as people have used their creativity. In terms of making nesting dolls, just a couple of glimpses. Nesting dolls, the turning of the wood, the creating of the blank, if you wish, is done in two pieces, but with a reminder that the opening, the ability to open the nesting doll requires that be possible, but not so easy to do that the nesting doll itself will fall apart. And that is a very tricky operation to get that kind of perfect match. Here you have someone actively turning and creating a nesting doll. Each half is created separately. So this solid one will be cut in half and then hollowed out. But the two pieces won't necessarily stay together throughout. A gentleman here who has finished his particular piece And this is how it's sized and cut using this series of tools to make sure that all the gradations are done correctly. This is all done by hand. Once you get two pieces that fit together well, that can come apart fairly easily, but also stay together, you use your file to create smooth edges, and you finish off the inside, of course, which is not necessarily finished. And then you hand it over to the painters, who start by drawing the design on the doll, doing the face first, and then over time, by hand, your best dolls are all done by hand, continue to finish the details, the broad outlines, and then the details of the doll. Most of the dolls are outlined in black, their design. Some are not, but a lot of the traditional ones are. And then it's a little bit like coloring between the lines in terms of applying the color. This is what such a quote unquote factory looks like. And you can see different people doing different parts of the operation down to the finishing. Some people will specialize in faces, of course, some people in other things, until you finally have the finished doll that is then varnished and ready for you to purchase somewhere in Russia, or perhaps at the Museum of Russian Art's gift shop, where we have lots and lots of wonderful nesting dolls to show you. And with that, I will conclude my official presentation and be more than open for questions and comments. And I'll stop sharing, Thea, so that people can ask their questions and make their comments and maybe even show their nesting doll.
Great. I know we're going past 1 o'clock, so if anybody has to leave, we certainly understand. But if you have time, stick around, because if you have questions, especially, Carol's here to answer them. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Well, Thea, not a question, but tell Carol, her and anyone who's in Minneapolis, go to her museum. I have been there several times with a friend, and it is a wonderful place.
Cindy,
and I wish I had the nesting doll my grandmother gave me, but I don't have it anymore, so I can't show it.
Oh, I'm sad. I'm sad too.
I am too. I'm just thinking, oh, it should be here.
Yeah.
But no, your place is delightful.
Thank you for that endorsement. I've, of course, been volunteering there since 2005. So I think it's the finest place on earth. So
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those treasures that people tend to miss when they're in the cities, and they miss something when they do.
That is so true, Cindy. And the thing is, we change exhibits so often that even people who come fairly often.
That's what we've discovered.
Yeah, yeah. We have 4 exhibit areas, and we tend to change each one 3 to 4 times a year. So
yes.
Yeah.
It looks like Sue has something to show us.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Well, this isn't technically a nesting doll. Let's see if I can show you.
It's cute.
Oh.
It's I can't find here. It has quite a picture on the bottom of a carousel, but it's not a nesting doll. And ooh, it does come apart. Look what's inside. It's Russian vodka.
All right. Yes.
It was brought back to me from actually to my husband from a cousin that was traveling there.
Yes.
And I've always thought it was kind of unique. I think he did taste the Russian vodka, but there's very little missing. So I don't think he had very much of it, but it is kind of, kind of uniquely painted, but I don't know, being only 40 years old, I'm not sure if it's hand done or whatever, but anyway.
Yeah, it probably is. And I have seen those, and I've seen pictures of them too. So there's many uses actually in many ways that nesting dolls appear, other than in the traditional set. Yeah, yeah, very wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Love her.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the nice presentation.
I'm sorry I went over. I thought I had a better time.
Oh, no,
Oh, it's
no.
wonderful.
Yeah, it was great.
Now, where is the museum?
Pardon me?
Where is the museum of
Oh.
Russian?
Yes, very, very accessible, because it is right off of 35W at the Diamond Lake Road exit. If you go onto our website, which is www.tmora.org, TMORA are our initials, and so that's our website. You will see that the address is 5500 Stevens, but we're actually right off of 35W on Diamond Lake Road. Stevens is the access road to the freeway. So if you're coming up from Sioux Falls and you're coming over on 90 and up on 35, before you get to the Twin Cities, before you get to downtown Minneapolis, 54 blocks before you get to downtown Minneapolis, there will be the Diamond Lake Road exit. And when you exit, go west, and we are in a renovated church building. And you absolutely cannot miss it. Big signs all over on the exterior, and good parking in the church parking lot across the way. So if you're in the cities, please do stop by. We're a small museum. Takes you maybe an hour, hour and a half to go through, would you say, Thea and Cindy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so you don't have to spend hours and hours and get museum fatigue. Yeah. Thanks, John, for asking that.
As some of you know too, Carol will be back later in our spring semester, which starts in March. She'll be back to do a talk on the jeweler to the Tsars on Fabergé. So that's going to be really exciting too.
I'm looking forward to that. I love talking about the Fabergé artistry. It's really quite wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks?
Oh.
All right. Well, Carol, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Well, and thank you. Thank you all for spending time. And I'm looking forward to seeing Sioux Falls via Zoom in the spring.
You will.
Fabergé.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.